welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 313 of the podcast. And on this episode, I want to talk about the New York Knicks and their fan base's obsession with superstar players. The New York Knicks have recently been eliminated from the playoffs, losing a 7-game second-round series to their key rivals in the 1990s, the Indiana Pacers. And there is two ways people are looking right now at the New York Knicks. One group of NBA fans are saying if the Knicks were fully healthy and had Julius Randle, they would have beaten the Pacers and made it all the way to the NBA Finals. Another thought that many are having is they need to pair their superstar point guard, Jalen Brunson, with another star player. This past postseason, Brunson averaged 32.4 points per game. That's mainly what I'm interested in talking about when it comes to the New York Knicks and their fans. Obsession with star players in the NBA. I mean, look, they signed this guy in Brunson who wasn't viewed as a star, gave him money, and is now one of the faces of the league. And did you not just see what happened to the Phoenix Suns? A team filled with superstar players? Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. That team went nowhere. They lost in the first round. I don't buy this idea that the New York Knicks are a star away from winning an NBA championship. They're already there. I also have always hated this idea that one star isn't enough. I remember when the team brought in Amare Stoudemire, and he had a great first season with the Knicks, leading them to the playoffs. They had a deep roster, and instead of seeing how things would go and develop, they go and traded for Carmelo Anthony. And I love Melo, but the combo of Amare and him did not work out. Duos in the NBA don't always work out, even when they look good on paper. Allen Iverson once played with Carmelo Anthony. That didn't work out either. James Harden and Dwight Howard, that didn't work out. The Knicks have something that a lot of teams in the NBA are currently lacking. They have an identity. They are a hard-nosed team that gives max effort night in and night out, and not every star works good under head coach Tom Thibodeau. Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, for example, were not good when they were coached by Tom Thibodeau. They did not buy in to what he was selling. The Knicks have a roster full of guys who are buying in, and to break that up, to bring in a superstar player who might not buy in would be a mistake. Another thing that bugs me about talking about bringing a star to the Knicks is people don't have an answer to who that star should be. Jimmy Butler is a name that's constantly brought up because Butler played for Thibodeau in Chicago and he played for Thibodeau in Minnesota. Well, guess what? Jimmy Butler has technically had his best seasons under Eric Spoelstra, not Tom Thibodeau. The Tom Thibodeau-Jimmy Butler relationship almost destroyed the Minnesota Timberwolves, so maybe that's not the route to go if you're the Knicks. And yes, the other big name is Donovan Mitchell. You should absolutely want Donovan Mitchell on your basketball team. I just don't think the New York Knicks need him. Jalen Brunson is their version of Donovan Mitchell. And for as good as Donovan Mitchell is, he still hasn't made it to a conference finals. Brunson is clearly just as good as him in the clutch. There's only one big name that would intrigue me if I were a fan of the New York Knicks, and that's DeMar DeRozan, because DeMar DeRozan has long been one of the NBA's most underrated scorers. I mean, he can score the basketball at will. I love seeing him play the game, and I think he would fit well with Jalen Brunson, and I think he could be coached by Tom Thibodeau. I think this is a guy who wants to win in the postseason because he has a bit of a reputation of not getting the job done when he was with the Toronto Raptors. I mean, he's thought of as the guy that was traded away for Kawhi Leonard, and then the Raptors immediately won the NBA Finals. I feel like DeMar DeRozan is at this point in his career where he wants to win an NBA title at all costs. So him joining the New York Knicks at a good cost makes sense to me. But adding another alpha who would view themselves as an equal to Jalen Brunson just doesn't. Like, Donovan Mitchell doesn't make sense. Jimmy Butler doesn't make sense because those guys would want this team to be equally theirs. This is Jalen Brunson's team moving forward. And look at the history of the New York Knicks. They've always been a franchise that had that one superstar player. In the 80s, they had Bernard King, and then they had Patrick Ewing. New York is the perfect place to be the sole star player. It just feels like that type of team that should have one superstar be the face of of the organization, and that's what the New York Knicks have right now in Jalen Brunson. Things are working out for you. Don't rock the boat. Maybe this isn't a fair example to use because they only have played together for one season, but the Milwaukee Bucks won an NBA championship with Giannis Antetokounmpo as the sole star player. Then they brought in Dame Lillard, and they only advanced to the second round where they were eliminated. Yes, Giannis was the sole star player, but he was surrounded by other players who viewed Giannis as the best player on the team. I never fully bought into the pairing of Giannis and Dame Lillard. Maybe it was Giannis who forced the Bucks to get him another star, but it doesn't feel like that's the case with Jalen Brunson. This feels like a guy who wants to be the alpha of the New York Knicks. He wants to be the face of the organization. He wants to be the one taking all of the big shots in the fourth quarter. And as a non-fan of the New York Knicks, I'll say it, I really like the trio of Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and Dante DiVincenzo. The fact that they played together in college at Villanova is a good story. They became a likable trio. If I had to break that up for a star who might not fit, I personally wouldn't risk that. Especially if it's for a player like Donovan Mitchell, who is too similar to Jalen Brunson. I feel like the name Paul George might come up, but I don't think that Paul George is coming to the New York Knicks. I believe Paul George is going to stay with the Clippers. Now, that's a name that's exciting because he's a good two-way player, but do I really think that Paul George would fit in with a Tom Thibodeau run team? I mean, this is a guy who constantly misses regular season games, and Tom Thibodeau clearly doesn't believe in resting superstar players. So I feel like Paul George would be a bad fit for the New York Knicks. The best players in the franchise history of the New York Knicks are the people who became stars with the New York Knicks. Patrick Ewing and Bernard King became stars with the New York Knicks. Jalen Brunson has become a star with the New York Knicks. Now, the interesting figure in their history is Carmelo Anthony. He was great with the Denver Nuggets, and then he was great with the New York Knicks. But sadly, the New York Knicks with Carmelo Anthony did not win anything memorable. He was a great player with the New York Knicks. I think he was wrongly criticized, and they had some weird eras with Carmelo there. They had the Jeremy Lin thing, then they had the Kristaps Porzingis thing. I just don't think New York is a great place to go if you're already an established superstar, because they're going to look at you as the savior. I don't think Donovan Mitchell wants to go into a situation like that. The Knicks made a surprisingly good move giving Jalen Brunson all of that money. Remember, everyone was against that. This is a guy who in the past had been a backup point guard. Then he had become a starter with Dallas. Nobody thought he was a max contract type of guy, but the New York Knicks believed in him and turned him into their best player. They should keep him as the number one best player on the team. And personally, I'm a guy who really likes Julius Randle as the number 2 star on the New York Knicks. I think he's the type of guy that works really well with Jalen Brunson. Yes, does he take too many 3-point shots and does he miss way too many? Absolutely. I think he's an up and down kind of player, but he's the perfect guy to be the number 2 to Jalen Brunson's number 1. So I would keep Julius Randle moving forward. If there's anything to improve on the New York Knicks roster, it's their bench. I mean, their bench by the end of the season was decimated, and that had to do with injuries. They were sometimes relying on Alec Burks. He's a good player, but he's inconsistent. If I were the New York Knicks, I would just try to improve on the margins. I wouldn't improve the starting lineup. I like the bigs that they have on that team. I like Julius Randle. I really like Mitchell Robinson. OG Anunoby is about to become a free agent. He's a guy I've always been mixed on. I mean, he can be really good in spurts, and then he can disappear down the stretch of a meaningful basketball game. Like, I just don't know if the New York Knicks should be giving him a lot of money. And I get it. Some of you might be listening to this podcast and say, look at what's happening with the Dallas Mavericks. They have Kyrie Irving, they have Luka Doncic, they have that 1-2 punch, and they're about to possibly make their first ever NBA Finals appearance together. That makes sense to me, but I just don't feel like Jalen Brunson is at that point in his career where he should be deferring to another superstar player, and I don't think Donovan Mitchell is Kyrie Irving. Like, I don't think that Donovan Mitchell would be his version of Kyrie Irving. He's not there yet. Kyrie Irving had already established himself as the guy who hit one of the biggest shots in NBA history history against the Golden State Warriors. He was secure with who he was as a basketball player. I think Donovan Mitchell is still trying to prove he's the alpha of an NBA team. Donovan Mitchell still wants to be considered the best player on the team. I mean, there's all this talk around the Cavaliers that if Donovan Mitchell signs an extension, that Darius Garland is going to want to ask out of the Cavaliers. I mean, I'm intrigued about what's going on with the Cavaliers. JB Bickerstaff is out of the job. I have no idea what's going on with Donovan Mitchell, but he just feels like a guy who, like Jalen Brunson, wants to take game-winning shots. And getting back to Paul George, that's maybe why he would work out with the New York Knicks. Like, I think that's his best case to be a member of the New York Knicks, that he's willing to defer. He made those comments earlier this season where all he wants to do is win an NBA championship. He doesn't care if he's the best player on the team, but he has Kawhi Leonard, and I feel like they're going to keep that train going on the LA Clippers for as long as they can. I just don't think that Paul George would be a good fit for the New York Knicks. But that's the type of guy who I would want to play with Jalen Brunson, the type of player who would defer to him being the best player on the team. And I don't think that would be Donovan Mitchell. I really don't think that would be Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler would act like the number one alpha dog to Jalen Brunson, and that would be a mistake to bring that kind of energy to the New York Knicks. And that gets me to this. This is the thing that drives me the most insane about a certain number of New York Knicks fans. No matter the year, a certain number of them believe that LeBron James is coming to New York. He's not. He's going to stay with the Lakers. I also don't want to ruin this dream for them, but I don't think that LeBron James would actually work with the New York Knicks. Tom Thibodeau would not want to rest LeBron James to play less minutes if he were with the New York Knicks. He doesn't seem like the type of star player who would fit well with Tom Thibodeau. I've said this before. I feel like LeBron loves the up and down regular seasons, the teams making the play-in, and then all of a sudden they're in the Western Conference Finals. I think he loves that aspect. I don't think he wants to play 80 regular season games, win 55, and compete in the postseason. I think he loves the up and down aspects of a regular season where you really don't know how to feel about his team, and then he loves being the savior in the postseason. That type of attitude would not mesh well with Tom Thibodeau, and I don't think it would mesh well with Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson does not want to play with LeBron James. And this LeBron obsession goes all the way back to the decision there were fans of the New York Knicks who believed that LeBron wanted to be a member of the New York Knicks. It was never going to happen. He doesn't want to be on that type of stage because I do believe he doesn't want that kind of pressure. Going to the Lakers at the time that he went, they weren't really thought of as a prevalent franchise, and then he rose them up again and he won the NBA Finals with them. He did the same thing with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He went to these organizations during a down period for them. If he goes to the New York Knicks, all of the pressure would be on LeBron James to lead them to the NBA Finals. And at this point in his career, I don't think LeBron James wants that kind of pressure. I remember not that long ago when there were New York Knicks fans who really wanted Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to choose the New York Knicks. Well, guess what? You avoided a catastrophe with them going to Brooklyn. Look at what happened to Brooklyn. It was a similar situation. Brooklyn was a team that had made the postseason. They had a really good roster. They had D'Angelo Russell, who was a young and upcoming point guard, and I do believe this. I believe it would have been in the best case for Jalen Brunson to have stayed with the Brooklyn Nets and continued to be their best player. I believe that would have been best for both sides because what's happened to D'Angelo Russell since is maddening. He went to the Timberwolves. It really hasn't worked out. He's been with the Lakers. It's been up and down. My point is the Nets had a good situation with a good young point guard, and in walks Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and banish him, and it didn't work out for the Brooklyn Nets. Instead, it was controversy after controversy after controversy because that's how star players deal with walking into a franchise. They take it over. The New York Knicks fans act like they want a superstar player to come in and take over, but that's the last thing they should want. And I'm not saying that would happen with Donovan Mitchell. Like, he doesn't have that feeling of a kind of guy, but things could go bad between him and Jalen Brunson. You just don't know how these situations are going to work out. No matter how good the players are, duos don't don't work out. Kobe Bryant was the best two guard at the time. Dwight Howard was the best big man in the NBA. They didn't get along and it didn't work out. Superstars are big personalities, and that's what it comes down to at a certain point. And Jalen Brunson has his own personality, and right now he feels like he has his own team. So the last thing the New York Knicks should want to do is to take that away from him. Let him enjoy this moment of being the best player on the New York Knicks. You're having success. I don't think next season you have to win an NBA championship. You're building something special where you can compete for the next 5 seasons and see where it goes. I'm also just rooting for Jalen Brunson to remain the sole superstar on the New York Knicks because I love rooting for teams like that. I loved it when Carmelo Anthony went to the Western Conference Finals with the Denver Nuggets as their lone superstar player. I loved it when Dirk beat the superstar-studded Miami Heat as the lone superstar on the Dallas Mavericks. Those teams are really fun to watch. Watching Jokic win the NBA Finals as the lone superstar on the Denver Nuggets. Yes, Jamal Murray is a great player. He's not a superstar. He's a star player. The Phoenix Suns went all the way to the NBA Finals with Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Miles Bridges, and they broke that up to bring in Kevin Durant. That was a mistake that has not worked out. They were obsessed with the stars, and I get it. They're shiny objects. They put up insane numbers. Kevin Durant is still one of the NBA's best scorers, but the last 2 times he's been brought in to be a savior for an organization, the Brooklyn Nets and now the Phoenix Suns, it has not worked out, and things look really bleak right now for the Phoenix Suns. Yes, they have Mike Budenholzer, but they have 3 stars who don't seem like they fit well together because they weren't playing a lot of minutes with one another. If I had to guess, I don't think the New York Knicks are going to go after Donovan Mitchell no matter what happens between him and the Cavaliers. They're not going to go after Jimmy Butler no matter what happens between him and the Miami Heat. And I don't know how they feel about Paul George. I don't know how they feel about DeMar DeRozan. But what they should feel good about is Jalen Brunson being their best player and being the face of the organization. Because this postseason, he demonstrated why he's a top 10 player in the NBA. And I look at this team and I say this is a case where I would bring the band back together. I would 1,000% bring back Julius Randle. I think he's been a good fit for the New York Knicks. I know he's had up and down with his stats, but I think he brings it every night. I think he's one of the most talented big men in the NBA. He can handle the ball. I think he's a good fit for Jalen Brunson because I think he's willing to defer to someone else. I'll end on this. Just know that if some New York Knicks fans get their way and they bring in a superstar player, the caliber of Donovan Mitchell, all of the pressure will be on this organization next season. Whereas with this season, they were a feel-good story. We were rooting for them because nobody thought the New York Knicks had a legitimate chance to win the NBA Finals at the beginning of the season. But we saw them go to the second round. We believed in this team. Do you really want that feeling to change from like a Cinderella story to a prohibitive favorite? I don't think that's the route you want to go because it didn't work for the Brooklyn Nets. It didn't work for the Phoenix Suns. And I've seen what happens when NBA franchises become obsessed with bringing in stars. The Boston Celtics brought in Kyrie Irving. That didn't work out. They also brought in Gordon Hayward. That didn't work out. What has worked out is them developing their own star players. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. That's what has worked out. And now the New York Knicks have taken a really good player and made him the face of their organization. Jalen Brunson's transformation is similar to that of Steve Nash. Steve Nash was a good player with the Dallas Mavericks, but then became a great player with the Phoenix Suns. Jalen Brunson was a good player with the Mavs. Now he's a great player with the New York Knicks. Nash won 2 MVPs with the Phoenix Suns, and nobody would be surprised if Jalen Brunson wins an MVP in the next 3 seasons. I could definitely see him being a multi-time MVP award winner. I know that teams in the past have won the NBA Finals by assembling these super teams. The Celtics did it, the Heat did it, and the Golden State Warriors did it. But the New York Knicks don't have to do it, and I don't think it would work out for them to even do it. Bringing in Donovan Mitchell would not end well for the New York Knicks. keeping Jalen Brunson as the face of the organization, you can build something special. You already have something that people are rooting for. I just hope the Knicks know how good they have it right now and how so many teams don't have what they have. You don't need to chase those star players. It's okay for your basketball team to have one superstar player, especially if that guy is Jalen Brunson. I feel good about the New York Knicks moving forward with Jalen Brunson as the number one. And Knicks fans should too. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.